3 months. The Rolex Explorer 39 has been in my possession for almost 3 months. The owner has exercised enough patience, and I cannot thank him enough for giving me such an extended time with it. And even as I hold it for the last time, knowing that it's going back, deciding on what I feel still is difficult to put into words. A small note to all of you watching, this is going to get quite philosophical, and it's opinion-based, of course. And if my musings do go over your head, or if I offend you by talking smack about your favorite watch, I apologize. At this point, there are at least 3 separate hands-on reviews with this Modern Explorer on the channel that I will link in the corner of the screen, but this isn't a review. It's a bit of soul-searching, and many of you have been a part of this experience with me as I spent weeks trying to understand the watch and myself that little bit more. Maybe, now finally, we can come to that elusive conclusion. To kill your darlings is a literary term used to describe how a writer should remove all conveniences, whether it's following cliché plot points, relying on key characters to further the story, the unnecessary lines and paragraphs that lead you nowhere. Even though you, as someone creative, worked hard at bringing these together, if they don't mean much to contribute to the story, then they are unnecessary. As an undergrad, I was taught a valuable lesson about not falling in love with your own work. A difficult thing to understand. There are 2 sides to this. Being a consultant, your work is always subject to change. If you put your heart and soul into it, only for it to be completely torn to pieces, that impacts you. It impacts your feeling of worth, your value. A stoic approach eliminates this. But in any creative endeavor without feeling or soul in the work, it is a lifeless husk. So it's finding that balance. When we work hard at something, anything in life really, even though we feel the need to maybe detach from it and return to look at it with a fresh perspective, not with prejudice by our love for the work itself or the time we've spent with it, detachment is difficult. This watch and the experience with it has taught me a few lessons and should serve as a good example to all of you out there. To fall in love with a narrative is powerful for business, marketing, relationships. Creating this connection between the end user and the mind that conceived it, it's magical. Something beyond anything else. As humans, we would be nothing without storytelling, without passion. That's the honest truth. And there are few better stories in the watch world than one that bases its history around the ascent of Mount Everest. As someone who has run a page dedicated to watch design, a bit of philosophy, a bit of history, I too have helped drive this narrative of the Explorer forward. In many ways, I fell in love with my own narrative around the watch as well, and failed to detach myself from the noise. It's ironic then that I was in part responsible for helping to weave this narrative, only to feel that it never lived up to its reputation in the end. Bittersweet then. The Modern Explorer to me is bittersweet. As many other collectors might point out, it's a great watch to add to a collection. A supplementary piece in many ways that you can throw on and use freely as a daily wearer. It's unrecognizable to the average person, it's beautifully made, but it is not the shining beacon that I thought it would be. The sort of watch that I thought would let me cash my chips in early, owning the one modern Rolex that truly spoke to me and allowed for me to leave the brand with my head held high. Nor do I feel like the Modern Explorer in this 39mm format will ever be a watch that I will return to again. And it's coming to terms with that. Sometimes in life the best things are right under your nose. Maybe something that you have never been looking for, but in your restless pursuit you look past or beyond it in search of something else, following a fabricated story that you or someone else has justified time and time again. But to what end? We could see this play out in a similar way where the watch owner buys an Explorer only to sell it, pursue every other name under the sun, and ultimately return back to the watch that started it all. The question that I keep asking myself, using the Explorer as an excellent example, is, what am I wanting from this journey? Now staring at one of the simplest but also competent pieces, the epitome of simplistic sports watch design, one that represents its brand so well with its understatedness, its lack of pretentiousness, will I ever be satisfied? Will you ever be satisfied with what you have? Should I not feel something more about such a watch that has such a reputation? Or is it because of this reputation, this status that we have built, that leaves me feeling less and less about it? The best way to explain my experience with this watch is by looking at the graph that you should be seeing on the screen. the ebb and flow. One day it's great, the next it's not, and so on. This is what I feel many Modern Explorer owners experience. It makes for a great piece to throw on once or twice a week, but not one that stays on my wrist much longer than that. Some have said that the reason why I haven't connected with this watch is because it's not mine, because I haven't bitten the bullet and bought it myself. Invested in it, we could say. The experience affects me differently. Maybe. But it comes down to asking the question of, would or wouldn't you spend money on it in the first place, given the chance? Would I be driven, after borrowing it for this extended period of time, to buy the watch from its owner? That could be justification enough. We will be seeing the Explorer receive a revamp in the coming year, maybe even 2021. After seeing the releases of the Oyster Perpetual 41s, there is a general feeling that the Explorer will receive the same treatment, but with an exception. We noticed that there were no white dial perpetuals offered in the new 2020 lineup. Could this be a precursor to seeing a white dialed Explorer launched? The only white dial perpetual would feel a lot more enticing and exclusive if it was built around the Explorer format. These are my thoughts, at least. The dream would be to see the Explorer introduced with a marginally smaller size along with the bigger counterpart, now with updated bracelet widths and clasps. A 1016 influence in there too. We can all continue saying this until we are red in the face. Odds are it's not going to happen. Can't blame a guy for trying. Do you know what it boils down to? It's passion. After experiencing the Explorer, I still do not feel a passion for it. I'll even go so far to say that I don't feel the passion that was injected into the mold when this was made. There is nothing about its design that says passion or character to me personally. An inspired design that now, in an effort to appear modern, along the way has lost something. And I'm not saying that it can't ever get it back. In fact, I'm hoping more than most that this watch receives a refresh and more consideration, because I would be first in line to get one. Bringing the argument back down to earth again, it is just a watch. Something made out of steel to tell us the time. No story or narrative should dictate its importance to us, its relevance. And what I try to instill here is a sense of individuality. Though many of us, me included, have lined up, jumped onto the bandwagon and pursued the watch for its brilliant concept, fallen for its story. It's up to you to decide on where the beauty lies. But stay true to yourself. Be resolute. Contrary to popular belief, yes, I will be sad to see it go. Partly because it makes for an excellent watch in any circumstance. That doesn't change. It fits so well in a collection. Also sad because it never lived up to the reputation that I myself had built up. Partly because I am disappointed that it never met my expectations, and that my search will have to spread elsewhere. But to say that the journey has to end with a watch, this elusive catharsis that many of us may never find in our lifetimes, is too much of a burden to put on yourself. The journey and the experiences are always greater than that final destination, even if those who are already there tell you otherwise. A 1016 would be nice though.